So in 2017, one of America's tallest dams, this absolute monument of engineering, was pushed right to the edge. What happened next was a near catastrophe, a huge evacuation, and honestly, one of the most incredible, high-stakes rebuilding efforts in modern history. This is the story of that disaster and its amazing rebirth. To really get what was at stake here, you have to picture the scene back in February 2017. I mean, record-breaking rain was just hammering Northern California. More than 5 billion gallons of water were pouring into Lake Oroville, and the dam's main safety valve, the spillway, was starting to fail, spectacularly. The whole situation was just escalating by the hour, threatening a flood of catastrophic proportions. So yeah, that brings us to the big questions we're tackling here. How could a critical piece of infrastructure like this get so close to failing? What were the hidden flaws that led to this crisis? And maybe the most important question of all, what kind of incredible engineering feats did it take to rebuild it, stronger than ever, against a deadline that seemed, well, impossible? Okay, first, let's just look at how quickly this crisis spiraled completely out of control. The timeline of how this disaster unfolded it's truly breathtaking. It all started on February 7th. Dam operators spotted this huge, growing crater right in the middle of the main spillway. They had to cut the flow way back to see what was going on, but the lake was still rising, fast. Just 4 days later, the water level gets so high it starts pouring over the emergency spillway, which was really just an unpaved hillside that had never, ever been used in the dam's 50-year history. Well, the very next day, that hillside starts eroding at a terrifying rate. The fear was that it would cause the concrete lip at the top to collapse, and if that wall failed, it could have sent a 30-foot wall of water downstream. It was only after a frantic, all-out effort to drop the lake level that the immediate danger finally passed. And the potential human cost of that failure, it was just staggering. When that evacuation order came down on February 12th, 188,000 people were told to get out, to flee their homes immediately. It was a very, very stark reminder of what was really at stake. Okay, so with the immediate crisis averted, the big question on everyone's mind became, why? How did a modern marvel of engineering find itself teetering on the verge of such a catastrophic failure? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of problems. Investigations showed the original 1960s design had some really fatal flaws. The concrete was too thin, the drainage system underneath it couldn't handle the water pressure, and parts of it were literally built on weak, crumbly rock, not the solid bedrock you'd expect. But what's really fascinating about this slide is that last point. 12 years before the crisis, back in 2005, environmental groups explicitly warned federal regulators that the unpaved emergency spillway was a huge vulnerability that could lead to catastrophic erosion. Their request to have it armored with concrete, at a cost of over $100 million, was ultimately rejected. So with both spillways now critically damaged, engineers were facing this monumental task. They had to demolish and completely rebuild everything before the next rainy season, which was, only a few months away. It was a race against time on an absolutely epic scale. One of the first huge hurdles they ran into was demolition. To rebuild, they had to blast away enormous amounts of damaged concrete and rock, often right next to structures that had to be saved. The problem? The traditional rules for blasting were based on preventing cosmetic cracks in the plaster walls of houses. Think about that. Applying those rules here would have slowed the project down by a year or two and cost hundreds of millions more. They just didn't have that kind of time or money. So this is where they got really smart. Instead of just following these old, outdated rules, the engineers put modern strain gauges all over the concrete. This let them measure the actual stress the concrete was under in real time. It was a totally science-driven approach that let them blast much faster and more precisely, all while knowing exactly what the structures could handle. This innovation was absolutely critical to hitting that emergency timeline. All right, so with the old structure demolished, the focus shifted to rebuilding. And this wasn't just about replacing what was there. It was about creating a spillway system built to modern standards, one designed to last for generations to come. And the undisputed hero of this entire reconstruction was a material called roller compacted concrete, or RCC. So think of it like this. Traditional concrete is kind of like pancake batter. It's wet and you have to pour it into forms. RCC, on the other hand, is a much drier mix, more like damp soil. It can be delivered by trucks, spread by bulldozers, and packed down by heavy rollers, almost like you're paving a road. This let crews place absolutely massive amounts of concrete incredibly fast, which is exactly what they needed to fill those enormous craters. Now this right here, this comparison, is what's so interesting. It just shows you this was a complete overhaul. The new concrete slab is nearly 3 times thicker. The amount of steel rebar they used more than tripled, from 4 million to over 12 million pounds. And, crucially, where the old spillway had 0 foundation anchors, the new one is locked down with steel anchors drilled deep into solid bedrock. Plus, a whole new state-of-the-art drainage system was put in to stop that pressure buildup that caused the whole mess in the first place. And the upgrades just kept coming. All the new steel rebar was coated in epoxy to stop it from ever rusting. For the emergency spillway, they built a massive underground wall of overlapping concrete piles to stop erosion cold. And that vulnerable hillside? Well, now it's armored with a new RCC splash pad, a gigantic concrete platform the size of 25 football fields designed to handle huge flows safely. So, when you add it all up, the race against time, the innovative engineering, the just sheer volume of materials, you really start to get a sense of the monumental scale of this comeback. The final price tag was, well, staggering. To put everything right and build back stronger, the whole project cost $1.1 billion. And that's a huge number for sure, but it pales in comparison to the potential devastation, both economic and human, had the dam actually failed. The sheer volume of material they used is just mind-boggling. Over the course of the project, crews poured more than 1.2 million cubic yards of concrete. You know, it's a number so large that it's almost impossible to even visualize on its own. So let's put it in perspective. That much concrete is enough to fill 372 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's just a colossal amount of material. And you have to remember, a lot of it had to be placed in just a few months to beat the clock. And behind all that material was an incredible human effort. The project took more than 2 million labor hours. To put that in perspective, that's like one person working nonstop, 24 hours a day, for over 228 years. Hundreds of workers were on site, many of them working around the clock, 24/7, just racing to hit that critical deadline before the winter rains came back. You know, the story of Oroville's reconstruction is without a doubt a triumph of modern engineering. It's a testament to what we can do under extreme pressure. But it also serves as a really powerful warning. The United States has thousands of dams, and a lot of them are even older than Oroville was in 2017. So the final question this leaves us with is a pretty sobering one. Oroville was saved, but what about all the others? Where will the next crisis strike, and will we be ready for it?